Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
Satellite radio service Sirius agreed to buy Pandora. No, not the jewelry boutique. For $3.5 billion today, a move that should help Pandora fend off Spotify. So, Joan, how do you expect this to change music streaming, or if it will in any way?
Well, what we've seen happen as streaming music has become sort of the de facto way that people listen to music now, some companies have clearly sprinted into the lead, and those are that's Spotify and that's Apple Music. Pandora was the biggest streaming music service for a long time that streaming music existed, but as these other companies have been able to come out with more flexible ways of listening to music, Pandora's been struggling to keep its listeners and to keep growing. So a combination like this could be a shot in the arm for Pandora to start competing against these rivals in places where nobody really has a lead yet, and that's in the car.
So if I'm Apple Music or if I'm Spotify, should I be worried at all? Like, is this at all an issue for them, or are they so much bigger and more relevant than Pandora that, you know, their Pandora kind of still is an also ran despite this deal?
I don't think that either of those services should count out Pandora in any respect. And I certainly don't think that they should count them out if Pandora no longer really has to worry as much about funding itself. It doesn't have to worry about its own stock price anymore. It doesn't have to worry about hitting growth metrics anymore. That was always a pain point for Pandora, being a publicly traded, all out there on its own company. So it would be foolish for them to count out a company that has so much data about music and what people like to listen to, getting more technology, getting an entry point into the car, and getting this body of millions of subscribers that are already paying a lot more than people pay for streaming music to get Sirius.
So we were talking about this ahead of the show. One of the interesting ideas, and I'm not actually sure if this is technologically possible yet, but maybe this is something that Sirius is hoping to do eventually, is taking Pandora's streams or like some sort of like on-demand service from Pandora and then streaming into your car using satellites. Is that like a thing? Is that what they're hoping to do?
So I don't know enough about satellites to know if that's
Am I
even
high right now?
Technologically feasible or possible. I sent them an email asking just that question to see if they could let me know if it's possible for Sirius to beam algorithmic or personalized stream of music to each account holder in a car.
Yeah.
Don't know, but it'd be interesting if they could.
We'll try to follow up with that if we do get an answer. Next up, Amazon threw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall last week, releasing over a dozen new devices, including a wall clock, a microwave, and many new Echo devices. I was there. It was kind of intense. Right? John, do you have any questions?
Well,
is there anything like that you're dying to know about this?
As you were hit by this assault of devices, as they were like throwing them, they were beaming them at your head.
It was very aggressive.
Which one of them do you think is really the most interesting for Amazon to be going into as a company?
Okay, probably the one that everybody should be paying attention to is the new Echo Dot, because despite the fact that Amazon comes out with all these different devices, the one that's by far the biggest seller is the Echo Dot. So
that's the small like hockey puck.
Yeah, and it's like $50. It goes on sale for like $30 a lot of the time. And that's what's really convinced a lot of people to do a lot more with their voice assistants, put them into their homes, all that other stuff. So the fact that they refreshed the Echo Dot is the most interesting. The thing that I was like repeatedly complaining to the Alexa executives about, and they were like bending over backwards trying to convince me like, no, this is actually really cool, was the wall clock. And like by the time I was done with like, I was like, maybe the wall clock is kind of cool. I don't know. Like, so I might be forced to like buy it. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. Last, I did want to get to this. Google is celebrating its 10th anniversary of Android. We've got a bunch of stories about the milestone on CNET, so please check them out. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Joni Salzman.
Thanks for listening.
Is this still Enya?
No.
That freaks me out when we come back on the ominous music. It's all random, so I don't really have a lot of control over
Really?
it.
I like
selection
stressed
is
out
mine,
Enya.
but like the order is completely out of my control. Either way. All right, so
This breaks my illusion. This shatters my illusion that you are the controller of all things podcast, Brian.
Yeah.
within reason.
Even Brian is not omnipotent.
Yet. So, as always, let's go ahead and jump into the chat and take your questions and comments about today's top stories. Of course, everybody's chiming in with what their favorite music service is. Please
sweet.
continue to do that. I myself subscribe to Spotify and am an avid user and beta tester when it first came out for Google Play Music. Ben and Joan, here's a good question. I'm just kind of extrapolating this from other comments that have kind of come together. How would this have changed course if somebody else had purchased Pandora? Where would this have been if maybe Spotify bought them out or Tidal bought them out? How would that have really kind of changed things up?
Well, definitely that depends on who it would be. So if Spotify bought Pandora, I would be shocked because Pandora's greatest asset is the fact that it has all this data over a like since people have had smartphones, pretty much the main way they've streamed music is via Pandora. And so Pandora has tons of listening data and also what they call their music genome project. And that's where humans that are experts in every genre of music tag every piece of music that's available on Pandora for certain attributes, like and it depends on the genre, like if it's fast hip hop or slow hip hop. And it's a very complicated process, but that's how they do their algorithms, and they deliver music that's tailored towards your tastes. It'd be really interesting because Spotify is already pretty good at that. And so they really would be, I don't know what they would be buying Pandora for other than that technology. And Spotify seems to be doing pretty good on that on its own. But that's just one possibility. You know, if Tidal, that was another one that came up, bought Pandora, that would be really interesting because Tidal...
Where would the money have come from?
That's one, because Tidal...
Has no money.
Has no money.
Yeah.
Also doesn't have a whole lot of subscribers. So... yeah, so maybe that one was just like
going back to what you were talking about with Spotify, that they're also really good at this. Do they have like their own version of the music genome
project?
Do they talk it up as much as Pandora does? Because I remember this was ages ago. This was like more than 5 years ago. This was like the big selling point about Pandora, and that's what a lot of news stories were about. We were like, check out this cool thing that Pandora is doing, where they're somehow able to connect like a bluegrass song and a rap song because so many different people listen to these two around the same time or something. So is that something that like Spotify just figured out how to do independently?
They've just done it in a different way. So Pandora started out with this idea that music experts would identify specific attributes of songs, and then they would use the data of listening, not just to like correlate, if you like this song and you like this song, then someone who likes song A will also probably like song B.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's basically kind of that's the underlying process that Spotify does. It's mostly all based on relationships between different types of listeners to music and comparing and contrasting and seeing where things fit.
So what you're saying is, since my friends have terrible taste, I'm screwed?
No, not necessarily. It's because people who have similar taste to you also listen to things that you might like.
Right.
You know what I
so
mean?
not necessarily your friends at all.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the underlying power of Spotify's platform. In addition to the fact they have, you know, like Rap Caviar is a curated playlist that they have. That's something where data definitely underlies how the curators of that list put it together. They're able to identify breaking artists quicker because Spotify has the data that it does. But there's also curatorial elements to Spotify as well. So that's Spotify.
Back off, Spotify. You don't know me.
I don't know. They do. I've appreciated a lot of the discovery on Spotify. And granted, the way I listen to music is I'll just listen to the same song 30 times a day for like a whole week. Like maybe I'm a serial killer. Maybe that's not normal.
Is that what you kill to? What's your kill music, man?
The kill music? It's very relaxing. It's actually what we were listening to.
Enya on speed?
It's sped up Enya.
Yeah, Huey Lewis in the news.
Right.
You actually might be a really good candidate for a Pandora listen. Pandora listeners in the past traditionally have tended to be what people call lean back listeners.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the kind of person that wants to build their own playlist that's really dedicated to finding the hit new artist before anybody else does. They just want good music that appeals to them without a lot of work. Traditionally, that's been Pandora's strong suit. Spotify has become better at that. And that's what's helped generate Spotify's mass appeal, is that it's not just going for people that are hardcore music fans. It's been able to appeal to that broad range of people more.
Yeah, the thing that ultimately turned me off of Pandora, that I stopped listening to Pandora nearly as much, is that they restricted your plays.
Yeah.
So that goes to what you were talking about, is that Pandora was first, and to actually convince the labels to go along with them, they agreed to more restrictive deals than ultimately what Spotify
It was
ended
even
up doing.
more. It was even more tense than that. So Pandora was first because the labels were like in the progressive genius of labels. They were just kind of like, no, we don't want to do streaming. Sorry, you can't have our music. So Pandora's like, okay, then I'll just get this other kind of license where I can play whatever I want. I'll pay you royalties. You have no say in whether or not I play it or not. But I can't give people exactly what they want to hear when they want to hear it. And they can only skip a few number of songs. It's a statutory license that allows digital providers to provide music online without having a direct deal with a label.
What?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
Yeah.
Man, the music industry is complicated.
It's super complicated.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, that's why, I mean, like, the labels are, like, not super big. They were not big fans. Musicians and the labels were not big fans of Pandora for a really long time because of that. And that's why companies like Spotify were able to, as the music industry started to realize you can't just ignore the internet, you can't ignore progress, people are going to want to listen to music this way. They were able to come in, didn't have any baggage, and strike these deals like Spotify does that makes it really competitive. So people like you would turn to it because you can listen to whatever you want
on repeat,
or
like click
for free
through it
with some ads.
Yes. Yeah. I pay at this point, but yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
So, have either of you guys used Pandora in the past? I know once upon a time, a few moons ago, I was subscribed just for poops and giggles, but like I didn't really use it that much because I am one of those guys who is really anal retentive about my library, so that's why I gravitated towards Spotify and Google Play Music. What was your experience with Pandora over history?
Well, I have an odd one because I've been covering I kind of try out them all, and I don't use one enough for it to really know me. I don't know. Well, you've talked a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I used Pandora for a while. I did a trial run of Apple Music. I actually was pretty impressed at their playlists and their ability to I just put on like bluegrass and like we got an Airbnb and just played like Apple Music for 3 hours or something like that, or like even longer. And but like I didn't feel like paying for it anymore, so I didn't do that. And now I'm paying for Spotify. And
what eventually got you to pay for Spotify? What got you over the
when
hurdle?
I say I'm paying for Spotify, I mean my little brother is paying for Spotify.
You're part of a family plan.
I'm on a family plan,
Nice.
so yeah. But like I'm not like pirating his or whatever. I'm not
No.
like stealing his account. So
Right, you're not password sharing.
right.
You're
exactly.
paying for it, just not you.
The
And-
Rubens are paying for it. The Rubens as a clan are paying for it. So
There's a lot of Rubens. Is that like a gigantic family account where like every Ruben is involved?
yeah,
I didn't know that they
Andy
had that
Rubin.
loophole.
Andy Rubin, founder of Android.
Speaking
He's
of
on
Android,
the account.
right.
He's on the account. Yeah, me and Andy are good buddies. So yes.
All right,
Anyways.
taking a few more questions from the chat. Our Wallop says this feels like a down-and-out company buying each other up, like when Kmart bought Sears, Pandora, and Sirius XM are behind the times. That's
You could, yeah.
some rough truth.
Is that true about Sirius though?
You could say that in a way. Technologically, Sirius is their biggest weakness is that they're terrible at mobile. They're terrible at streaming. Their
But they've
product isn't
always
very good.
intended to be in the car. That was
And it
always
was
their
a
MO.
coup as they were their automobile integrations. They have been a really profitable company for a long time in an industry, music, that is not profitable. Clear Channel, iHeart, I think, is in bankruptcy protection. None of the streaming music services are profitable, at least none that are operating at scale. So that makes them a bit of a unicorn. Like, you may not agree with their product, you may not like it, but they actually have managed to make money in an industry that doesn't and hasn't for a really long time.
We've said it over and over again. We said it today. The music industry is a miserable place to try to maintain.
Spotify isn't profitable yet.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Getting less profitable.
We were looking at their market cap. It's worth $30 billion.
You cover Amazon? Doesn't
Okay,
matter.
it's true.
Magic.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Tech magic.
It's a
Just sprinkle it
trillion-
over these companies.
$1 trillion retailer that makes no money.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they don't make any money.
Speaking of, James is asking if we wonder if this will actually affect Spotify's stock price.
That's a good question. I didn't check. I should look right now.
It does. When I checked earlier, it didn't appear to have impacted them at all. Pandora is a much smaller player.
It's
so
true.
going from Spotify's market cap, which is $31 billion, they're getting bought for $3.5 billion. So
Yeah.
it's 10% roughly. So yeah, it might impact Spotify's stock price a little bit, but probably not a ton. Plus, from reading your story, it looks like Sirius is going to keep Spotify independent for now, and they're just going to like kind of advertise each other's services on the other one. So it doesn't look like this is going to be like this intense sudden integration between the two, which means that like if I'm Spotify, I don't have to worry that all of a sudden like my competition is going to come out with like this brand new thing to come after me.
Yeah, that's true. But it should be noted that Pandora, even though Spotify is much bigger than Pandora by a long shot, it in the U.S., which is where Pandora pretty much only operates anymore, more people listen to Pandora than listen to Spotify in the U.S.
Which I find shocking.
Yeah, because Spotify is by far the most listened to and most subscribed to streaming music service, but that's worldwide, and they have a lot of international. They're a Swedish company, so they're not even a U.S. grown company. It's not like they started out here.
That's another one that just makes it even more complicated is the international rights and restrictions. We've got tons of listeners from all over the globe in the chat talking about how X service is not available in Y place kind of thing. It's kind of nice that we do have so many different varieties out there. Some people still get the short end of the stick regardless. Right now, who is, in fact, at the top of the totem pole as far as fiscal? Michael Brown is asking, how long before Apple Music dethrones Spotify?
It'll take a while because Apple Music's greatest strength is in the US because Apple Music's greatest strength is being on the iPhone. And the iPhone is the dominant. Is it the dominant phone in the U.S.? Is it that close with Android, or is it not even that?
I believe it's in general they're 50-50 in the U.S.
So like everywhere else in the world, Android rules smartphones, and Apple Music's greatest strength is that Apple Music is baked into your iPhone. It's not necessarily because it's a better service. I mean, it's up to everybody to decide which service is the best for them, but it's not necessarily because Apple has far and away the best service. So it'll be harder for Apple to be growing as strong as Spotify is everywhere else in the world that's not the US. But right now, it looks like Apple Music and Spotify in terms of subscribers are about neck and neck. Apple Music might be a little bit bigger than Spotify in the US, which is the biggest music market. But rest of world, total whole world, Spotify is the biggest by listeners and by subscribers, followed by Apple Music. And then the rest is kind of a grab bag. Pandora is definitely still very strong. Deezer is strong in very certain markets. Google Play Music is out there. YouTube Music is out there, not doing great. Tidal's out there, not doing great. It really is kind of a two-way contest between between Spotify and Apple Music. And so it's interesting that Pandora is getting what could be some support to take them on.
So do we think we're going to actually see any of these competitive aspects start to benefit our consumer pricing?
No.
Of course not.
I mean, like considering all these companies are unprofitable anyways, you can't really beat $10 a month for all the music in the world. And that's all decided by the labels, really. You got the $9.99 a month. You've got basically like $15 a month for family streaming plans, and then you've got those sort of like in-betweeny services, like Amazon has one where you pay like $4.
Oh God, that's right. Amazon has one too.
and a $10 a month service too. You pay like $3 to $7 somewhere in there, and you get some perks and some flexibility, but not all of it. I don't think there's going to be much change in the pricing. Like I said, that's stuff that's decided by the labels. The labels say you can't offer this and you can't offer that.
There's a possibility that there might be some promotional window with Pandora trying to give itself a shot in the arm for a short term. But from what you said, it sounds like there's really not a lot of profit margin for them to play with to begin with.
No.
So if they are going to do it and you're really interested in trying it out, I guess you're probably not going to have a very long runway to do it. They're not going to have a lot of money to mess around with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is the cheapest right now? Is it that Amazon $2 a month? Like,
I think
Very
it's
cheapest?
3. I think it's 3,
I think
and I
it's
think you
3.
have to own an Echo device.
Only listen on the
So,
Echo.
Yeah. So that's an upfront cost where you have to at least spend, let's say you get an Echo Dot while it's on sale, you would have to spend a minimum of $30 to get one, which isn't like the worst thing in the world, but it's
That's
$3.
3 months of another service.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's $3, but you have to own the specific device, and unless you do some like interesting jury rig where you, but yeah, I've seen people put Echo Dots in their cars. You don't. It's not like a mobile listening thing like with your phone or anything like
Right.
that. It's just for home listening.
Yeah.
here's a question from our old friend Srinjoy. Is the purchase of Pandora a strategic move from SiriusXM after they failed to stop the Music Modernization Act for paying new royalty for classic music before 1972? Wow. Good question.
No, I don't think it is, because Pandora's been paying those royalties for a really long time. So if they were trying to find some sort of loophole, then Pandora's not the way to get about it.
Oh my God, you actually knew the answer to that.
Yeah,
Well done.
The MMA, not to confuse with mixed martial arts, the Music Modernization Act. Probably like
I am so relieved you're here. I would have been like, yes.
that's a really specific question, and it's so props that you
Well done, Srenjoy.
are familiar.
In all fairness, both versions of the MMA are equally violent. James asks, do you think any streaming services will start to bring out some hardware?
Well, Spotify, there are rumors that it's working on stuff like that.
Like a speaker?
I can't remember. I don't know. There's always rumors. And I mean, like, obviously, like, Apple Music already has whatever, the HomePod. Amazon already has tons of speakers.
Yeah, that's true.
Google makes their, what do they call their
The home. The Google Home.
The home. So already a lot of, by nature of the fact that tech is such a consolidated thing and all these giants they have their fingers and everything. A lot of the services already have hardware. But Spotify, since its founding, like Daniel Ek talked about like light bulbs that would play music for you. So it's something that's baked into their
I would be into that.
light bulbs. Why didn't Amazon do that?
If
They're missing out on the
Amazon-
singing light bulb market.
If Amazon was going to come out with a wall clock, then Spotify should do some sort of like goofy. I like that idea. It sounds really stupid.
Singing light bulbs.
Especially if it's a color changing light bulb.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That like it kind of like does like
Strobes,
cool
too.
kaleidoscopic or strobing like while it's playing different kinds of music. So
Except any speaker that's going to fit in a package that small is going to sound like duty.
yeah, okay.
Hey, BFR.
Thanks,
You
thanks
know
for
what?
ruining everything.
Amazon should drop Prime Music and launch Twitch Music. That would make Twitch compete with YouTube in both video and music streaming.
That'd be
That is an
curious.
idea.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem with Twitch is that it largely is perceived as, kind of a gaming network. So if you do Twitch music, I guess like a lot of people are just going to assume that it's a bunch of like, sounds from Zelda or whatever.
I'd be into that.
It's just the Super Mario thing on repeat. But either way, I think they're gonna stick with Prime Music because Prime is like the much better known service, and like that's what they're really like building around.
Yeah.
So that's my expectation. But it's an interesting idea.
Y'all need to start delving into some more video game music. There's some good stuff out there. Chiptunes, you gotta check that out. Before we say goodbye, let's run down some Amazon stuff real quick. Timothy asks, is this Amazon's way of getting back the Fire market because of the failure of the Fire phone?
Yeah, great question, and that's definitely what a lot of people have assumed has been the case for a long time. The Fire phone had to fail to a certain extent for the Echo to survive and thrive and do really well because had Amazon actually been successful in the smartphone market, maybe they wouldn't have focused as much on this other thing called voice computing and smart speakers that nobody was really selling 4 years ago. But now their strategy is really, and this I'm stealing from my colleague Ry Chris, their strategy is just a catch us if you can strategy where they're just coming out with as many devices and updating the ones that they have as quickly as they can, all these new services, in hopes that, Google and Apple and you name it, a lot of other folks aren't going to catch up to them. So if they had a phone at this point, it just might have been a distraction from creating this giant ecosystem that they're working on. Yeah.
And lastly, let's talk about the clock a little bit. What does the clock do? Does it have Alexa? Sorry, everybody. I know I've been trying to be better about triggering that. What is the point of the wall clock, and will it play Pink Floyd?
Okay, so the wall clock does not have Alexa built in, which I initially was just like, oh, like it's
What's
a wall
the
clock
point?
with a. So basically, if you have
Time?
if you have, yeah, it tells time and it's an analog clock. And
Innovative.
if you have an Echo next to it and you set a timer, it'll show on like the hands how long you still have on the timer with these little like digital diodes on the side. So it'll like count down. But other than that one feature, I couldn't really figure out whether it did anything else. And it's $30.
That's a lot of money for a
I don't know.
clock.
I'm
Doesn't
like,
do anything.
I
Except tell time.
pitched Amazon. I was just like, guys, I think this clock is so stupid. I want to write like a 2,000 word deep dive into like the creation of the clock. Like,
Was that your pitch? This is so dumb. Let me
Let
get
me
into
write
just
about
how
it.
dumb.
just convince me otherwise why this isn't so stupid. So, but to their credit, I was saying this, that Apple would never do something like this.
No.
They would never come out with a product that's not really that polished, that doesn't really do that much out of the gate, and does kind of seem a little bit silly or stupid or clunky, you know.
Right.
And so good for them that like we as tech journalists like to throw rocks all the time and say like, why don't they take risks? Why don't they take chances? Well, this is
And
certainly
then the
one
second
of
they
them.
do, you guys like take a crap all over it.
Yeah, fine. I'm giving them credit and making fun of them at the same time, which I think is totally merited. You know, like that is, I can talk out of both sides of my mouth. That is what I'm here for.
Look, they wouldn't have launched it if they weren't planning on trying to raise a few eyebrows in the first place. You
Yeah,
know, who the hell knows what really comes out of it in the long run? But I like the idea that they're just gonna get weird.
Yes,
Let's
and
get
they're
weird
they're
with
known
Amazon.
for being weird, you know, more often than a lot of other tech companies,
Yeah.
which is why it's kind of like fun to cover them. Seeing some of the reportage out of that event too, a lot of people seem to think that the microwave is going to be this Trojan horse that's going to convince everybody to buy like Echo. First of
Maybe.
all, that doesn't have Alexa built into it either.
So then what does the microwave even do?
It's like, you know, Alexa, cook my popcorn, or like pop my popcorn, and then
Yeah.
you know, so
Strike
you
three,
turn
Ruben.
it on. Sorry, so you can turn it on using your voice assistant, and it also comes with dash replenishment service built in. So when you run out of
Right.
popcorn, it will send you popcorn automatically.
Okay.
So those are the two features for
How
that.
does it know when you run out of popcorn?
It just knows. It just does. I don't know.
What's the greater number world after first? Because that's where we're leaning towards right now.
Zero world. It would have to be, this is a zero world problem. My microwave has to know when I've run out of popcorn.
Null world, beta world, alpha world.
Alpha world problems?
I don't know.
We'll work on it.
The darkest timeline.
We didn't really get to talk much about the Android piece, but there is a really excellent historic video up on CNET right now. We're going to link to it in the description below. I highly recommend looking at it and sharing with us your memories of the launch of the Android phone and Larry Page and his luscious rollerblades. Until then, we are out of time, so thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow. Who wants to take us out today?
Can you do it?
Yeah, I'll do it. Okay, so the 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, FeedBurner, Google Play Music, the Amazon Echo, and of course, CNET.com. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Take care, folks. See ya.